Does it make a difference what business you're in? Every day something happens. So by every day something happening, there's someone in an expertise field that has expertise on a specific subject that you could have on your podcast. I don't want to go and pick people who I want to talk to. I want to pick people who my niche would want to hear from. Like I have a list of 25 people that I would love to have on the podcast. The top 5 are Nehemiah Davis, entrepreneur. Russell Brunson, mega mogul entrepreneur. David Sands. I would love to have David Sands on the podcast because he's the reason for me doing podcasts, getting back into the podcast. Him and his co-host, Miss Donnie. Who else? I would love to bounce ideas off of Tim Ferriss.
Welcome to the Social Mojo Podcast, the place where entrepreneurs and creatives come to discover the secrets behind building a powerful, engaging brand without spending a fortune. Let's meet the host, Mr. Anthony Porter, your guide on this journey to harness the power of organic social media. In each episode, we dive deep into the strategies that work, sharing insights, actionable tips, and success stories from experts and trailblazers who've done it all. From planning your content with precision, growing your audience authentically, to monetizing your passion effectively, we've got you covered. So, whether you're just starting out or looking to elevate your social media game, stay tuned. Because here, at the Social Mojo Podcast, we're all about making your brand unforgettable, organically.
It's day 4. It's day 4. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Anthony here, Social Mojo Podcast. It's day 4, man. Like I said, it's day 4 of the Impacful 12 days of podcasting. Today, we are just going to expand our knowledge on how we can help grow your podcast with the 12 days of podcasting. Now, I chose 12 days because it was based off of the Grow the Show podcast, giving you my insights as well as helping you grow, monetize, scale, track, convert, generate leads for all businesses through podcasting. So I'll say today we want to welcome you into day 4. Today's podcast, today's episode, we are going to talk about and focus directly on format. All right, so when you talk about format, your format is a structural backbone. The format, how you do your show. Period. It explains it so well. How you do your show. We've brought you the first 2. All right. The listener's mission. If you don't have a mission for your listeners to, hone in on what you talk about, then guess what? They're not going to listen. Okay, so we pretty much established that. So today we're going to get straight to the point. We're going to explore types of podcast formats. So everyone knows there's endless possibilities when it comes to podcasting. There's creative ways to deliver your podcast. There's creative ways to deliver your content. But most of them come down to 3 specific types of content. And those 3 specific types are guest interviews, solo episodes, and discussion and talk shows. That's universal. Guest interviews, solo episodes, of course, discussion and talk shows. So, what is a guest interview? Guest interviews when you bring a guest specifically in your niche or similar to your niche and let them share some insights for your audience. Now, because the Social Mojo podcast is helping small businesses, entrepreneurs, content creators, influencers grow through the use of podcasting, we might bring on some business owners who use podcasts. Or we might bring on some business owners who use social media. Or we might just bring on some business owners who are just strictly business owners, influencers, creators. What we want to do is we want to get the message out to you to help you, and could find someone in somewhere. It could find positivity in what would be your niche. Solo episodes, Social Mojo. We do a lot of solo episodes. It's just one person talking head. The whole time. It's almost like an audiobook, but instead of an audiobook, it's me. It's your host, Mr. Anthony Porter. And then discussion and talk shows is where you have multiple conversations going on between multiple hosts or guests. And we focus on the discussion through a structured interview type. So basically, it's like watching The View, watching all your talk shows like Jennifer Hudson or back in the day, The Tonight Show, The Daily Show. All of these shows are talk shows. All right. So they bring on guests, they have a discussion back and forth. And then there'll be another guest that'll come on in another segment. And then they might have we're not having a musical guest. We're not doing that. So, but anyway, this is what talk shows and discussions and podcasts are about. So which format is best? Really, none of them. They all great. Don't make no difference. If you have a host, a guest, if you have a guest and that guest is allowed to come on and give your listeners insight. If you are a solo podcast uh, person, then it is for you to be sure to lock in and draw in your audience. And when you lock and draw your audience in, then your audience, you have to keep them captivated. Now, if you have a talk show, you got to have those specific topics that people want to hear. Like you have true crime podcasts. You might have a couple people come on talk about solving crimes. There are millions of people who want to hear true crime episodes. You could have like the Shade Room. You could have a person come on and not nearly say the Shade Room, but you could have someone come on and have a discussion panel on what's going on in America right now. You could have anything going on with the ex-president, or you could have anything going on with the soon-to-be former mogul Diddy. All of this can happen, all right? You could talk about, you could have guests, you could have discussions and talk shows about the war overseas. All of these are great topics, and people want to hear either expert opinions or opinions that take away from the monotony of just one person giving you the information. Now, you want to pick your format? Here's how. We got to talk about it. Here's how you pick your format. A format that serves your listener's mission. A format that you will enjoy making. A format that you can sustain long term. You don't want to make something and then switch it up and then switch it up and then switch it up. Basically, you start out like I'm starting out as a solo episode podcaster with the adaptability to add guests because I want to bring in people that not only will enhance my listeners' mission for my listeners, but also enhance their credibility and my credibility. So for you, you got to think long term. Don't just think short term. Long term is the goal. Okay. Now, what you want to do is you want to avoid the default. Whatever you choose to do, be consistent. See, I live by the 3 C's. That's community, content, and consistency. I got to be consistent with making my content for my community. I'll say that again. I live by the 3 C's. I have to be consistent with making my content for my community. So I don't want to do something and stop. I want to keep going. So that's what you have to do. Whatever format you choose, make it consistent. You can always add to it. There could be days where you have no guest if you're hosting a guest show. You have no guest. So guess what? You might have to do a solo episode or two. But if you start out doing episodes that you got guests on it, you got to continue that. If you start out with a discussion panel, you got to continue that. If you start out solo, you have to continue that. But you can always add those elements in. It's just like cooking. Once you start cooking, you got to be able to add those ingredients. Those ingredients can help you or hurt you, depending on how you structure it. Now, say this weekly guest interviews, ask the question, why? Why would you want to have weekly guest interviews? Well, it's quite simple. Every day something happens in this world. Does it make a difference what business you're in? Every day something happens. So by every day something happening, there's someone in an expertise field that has expertise on a specific subject that you could have on your podcast. I don't want to go and pick people who I want to talk to. I want to pick people who my niche would want to hear from. Like I have a list of 25 people that I would love to have on the podcast. The top 5 are Nehemiah Davis, entrepreneur. Russell Brunson, mega mogul entrepreneur. David Sands. I would love to have David Sands on the podcast because he's the reason for me doing podcasts, getting back into the podcast. Him and his co-host, Miss Donnie. Who else? I would love to bounce ideas off of Tim Ferriss. Man, that would be dope for me. And excuse me if I'm geeking out, but that would be dope for real. Like these folk have been in the game for so long, podcasting and entrepreneurship and all of this, man, business minds. There's a ton more, but these are the people who I tend to uh, listen to more and more. Also, my last one is definitely I would love to interview Markel Russell. I would love Markel to be on the podcast. Markel has a unique story which kind of resonates to me, coming from the culture that I'm in. So I understand, and he brings the hood into his deliverance. And by bringing the hood into his deliverance, it helps me to understand what, his Client Attraction Academy. It helps me to understand, like, yeah, I've done things like that and I can be in this point. Yeah, so a few reasons why interviewing in itself is a difficult skill. You have to know how to interview. Like, you truly have to know how to interview. You have to know when to make eye contact. You got to know when not to make eye contact. You got to know what questions that you have. First of all, you have to do your research on the person you are trying to interview. You have to do your research. And then you have to have a list of questions. And then with each question, you should have at least 2 extra questions. So if I interviewed Markel Russell, one of the questions I would love to ask him is, what made you start your Client Attraction Academy? And as he's giving me an answer and I'm taking down my notes, as he's finishing up, it's, well, how is that working out for you? So it keeps the listeners intrigued on what you're talking about. And it keeps Markel answering without being salesy. So you have to really basically understand that when you are doing podcasts, you got to know how to interview a person. You got to determine, is it going to be live? Is it going to be pre-recorded? These things play into place, man, because if it's going to be live, it means you got to be on your A game. You can't be on your B game or your C game. You have to be on your A game, period, point blank. A game is where it's at. So understand this, guest episodes are so much work. We just talked about it. You have to, if you try to book them, something happens, you have to rebook them. Basically, you got to be able to have a backup plan, because a lot of times things happen. You might get upset about it, but things happen. So you have to be able to have a plan B in case plan A doesn't work. If plan A, say you want to interview Kevin Hart, God, that would be major. Because Kevin has a podcast. Kevin Hart has a podcast. He does a lot of interviews. Kevin Hart is a mogul. Do you not understand that? That guy he's probably the hardest working man in show business. And a lot of people just like it because he's making money and whatever. Shout out to Kevin Hart doing this thing, man. I kid you not. That brother is busting his tail. And I've been checking out every single movie. And I've been cracking up laughing. Hey, the roast with Tom Brady was excellent. All right. What touched me the most is I watched him get the Mark Twain Award. Netflix put that on. When the people who came out for him, like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Regina Hall, JB Smooth, his buddy who had a stroke, that was touching to me, man. Because these people showed up for a guy, they didn't have to, and rocked out. Rocked out. All right. Robin Thicke, Nick Cannon. And the list goes on and on. Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry, listen, he had comedy royalty in the building. He had Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle on stage. I don't care if it was 30 minutes, 10 minutes apiece. That was royalty for comedy. All right. That was super royalty. But you have to, like I said, and I'm sorry I geeked out again. You got to have a plan B because plan A could fail. So now, am I saying you shouldn't have guests? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when you are planning your guest hosting episodes, you got to have episode B ready to go in case episode A, something happens. Like, people can have connection difficulties. Like, if you're doing a podcast remotely, like I like to do, they could have connections where they can't get on. So they can't get on. what happens? You gotta have a different plan for it, all right? So, but there are perks to it. It's exciting. Most guests are truly exciting, and your listeners are definitely low. If you pick them out the right way, that's part of the framework. And having somebody in your niche pop up on your podcast is like steroid for your mojo. You don't get it, man. Like, if you got somebody in your niche that was A-listed, first of all, don't try to go out and get an A-lister and you're not ready for an A-lister, okay? But that list of people that I had is a dream. Like, I've watched Nehemiah Davis for the last 2.5, 3 years, and dude's killing it. David Sands' podcast is killing it. And I definitely love the hot seat. The hot seat is so freaking remarkable. People claim to have businesses, but never really put their business to use because they don't know how. All right. So not knowing how to get to point A, from point A to point B, that's a problem. They make sure that you know that. If you can survive the hot seat, hey, you might be able to be in business dealing with David Sands and Miss Donnie. And another thing that helps when you have guests on there that are credible, that are verified, got that blue check, hey, it gives you the opportunity to grow your audience because, check it out, somebody's listening to your podcast can go tell their friend, and their friend can go tell another friend, and before you know it, you've been recommended by 4 or 5 people, and then they recommend you to another different 4 or 5 people. So here it is. Here's the math. Your friend tells one person. That person tells 2 people. Those 2 people tell 3 people apiece. Those 3 people tell 4 people apiece. Those 4 people tell 5 people apiece. So now it's growing. All right. And it's grown and grown and grown. So pretty soon you're up to about 50 to 60 people that's been told. And now your podcast is growing. And it adds credibility because you sat down with a person in your niche, did a show, killed it, sent them the episode so they can put it on their social media. You can put it on your social media. And now you're tagged out. Now, the power of a solo episodes, you by yourself. You got to know how to rock, man. You have to know how to rock it out. The pros to it, hey, let me tell you, they're so much faster. And you perform better. You ain't worried about, oh, I got to ask this question. You can say what you say when you jot it down, you do your research, take your notes. You say what you want to say. You can get through your episodes fast, and you ain't got to worry about too much. Now, the difficulty is another one is your listeners are there for you. You got to understand that they there for you, man. They listening to you. Nobody else. They listening directly to you. They not listening to Joe Blow or Mama Sita. They listening directly to you. And they want to hear from you. They love you. They want more of you. Solo podcast episodes is exactly what it is. Many of your listeners prefer them guests. Some don't. So which one should you choose? Choose both. I just told you that. Choose both. Choose both. Now here's how I want to do it, because I did this last year. I do my solo episodes, then I have a guest on. What I haven't done, and I'm going to do, is have a discussion, a panel discussion. And when you have that panel discussion, you have a moderator, you have questions, people answer, and everybody listen. You get it done. You give so much insight. It's like having a summit on video. You give so much insight, and once you give your insight, everything's kosher. You're doing good. You peace out. You knock it out the box. Your listeners grow. You become an authority figure, and it doesn't take you that long. At any given time, podcast can be from anywhere from 20 minutes to 35 to 45 minutes. Typically, you want to get to the 25-minute mark because, hey, listeners, the span's kind of short this time around. So I approach it that way to where I can do both. Right now, the focus is definitely on solo episodes, and being the fact that they're on solo episodes, I can focus directly to you, give you my undivided attention. You have my attention, and trust me, listen to me. If you have something that you would like to know about, you can email us at socialmojopodcast@gmail.com. That's socialmojopodcast@gmail.com. We'll do the episode. We'll break it down. Because what you might want to hear, somebody else might want. And that's the beauty of giving back to my peoples. All my listeners, everyone who's downloading the episodes, I appreciate you. All right. I definitely appreciate you. And you know what? I'm gonna have to do something for you. I'm gonna do something for you. I'm gonna think about that, and I'm gonna definitely do something for you. Okay. So once you get to that point, you have your listen. Again, when you're doing guests, you have to prepare questions. Say you got a podcast of 35 minutes you want to do with this particular guest. So you got to come up with questions that will have them talking. But you got to have those rebuttal questions that will have them truly diving deep into the first question that you ask. Now, you're doing a solo episode, you get through it quicker, but you can give out a lot more information. And I always ask folks to take notes. If you're taking notes and you're writing this stuff down, guess what? You're doing an excellent job to begin with. All right. So that's one of the things you have to understand. That's the beauty of doing solo. But both of them are lucrative because not only do you gain the authority, trust, you gain the audience growth, and then you are that person. You are that podcaster. Now, how often do you publish? That's a key question, and we're going to get into that because I like to publish once a week. Now, depending on how I format, if I got a guest and I think a guest is going to be a hot topic ticket, I'm going to schedule the podcast. We're going to record it, edit it, and then when I upload on the day that I upload on, which is usually Mondays, unless it's a holiday, then it might come late. You best believe that interview's coming that Wednesday. We're not playing around. Now, the discussions, I want to do those on the weekend. That way everybody's free. We get it done early, get it out there. I want to get it to the point where we're going live, all right? I want you to see us in the element at work doing what we do best. That's answering questions and having a discussion. So that's about the way that things go. A lot of people like to post 2 or 3 times a week. Most people start out, they post every day. Like this segment is every day, the 12 days. So it's every single day of podcasting. And it's real smooth about it. But when you structure yourself, there's certain things. Now, I'm going to put together, here's what I'm going to do. Since we're in about midway through, about a quarter of a way through, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put together a format, a structured plan. If you follow it, it's free. If you follow it, that's great. If you don't follow it, wonder why. Take that moment and wonder why you're not to a level that you feel like you should be at. All right. Now, once you do everything, you define your audience, you get your list and mission together, and you get your format. Congratulations, you have officially made it to level 1 of the podcast success ladder. Now, we're at level 1. We where we wanted to get to, right? Now we got to get to level 2. That's retention. So tomorrow's episode, the next day, day 5. We're going to talk about retention, all right? Hey, I thank you for stopping by. All right? Tell your friends, check out the 12 Days of Impactful Podcasting. From intro on up to where we're at now. And even if it's the last episode, day 12, tell them to check out the podcast, get some of that information, that insight. Check out the Social Mojo podcast on Apple Music, on Spotify, on Google Music, on Amazon Music, YouTube, the videos. We shoot the videos. This right here. YouTube podcasting. And I'm going to see y'all when I see y'all, man. Again, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for stopping by. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I love y'all, man. Peace.
And that wraps up another episode of the Social Mojo podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and spending your time with us today. We hope you found our conversation insightful and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe to the Social Mojo podcast on your favorite platform, and be sure to download the episodes so you never miss out on our latest content. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue bringing you great discussions every week. A special thank you to our incredible executive producers, Sincere and Charlie Straughter, Rhea Cash, and Theory Porter. Your vision and dedication make this podcast possible. Remember, the Social Mojo podcast is a proud part of the Amplify Pod Academy, where we strive to amplify voices and share stories that matter. Until next time, stay connected and keep the mojo flowing.
vibe.